Welcome back, everybody. Today's topic of principles of interior design is balance, which is also a very important element in interior design. We're going to talk about the four types of balance: symmetrical, asymmetrical, radial, and then color and texture. So let's get started so then you can get started on your project. So, symmetrical is having a fireplace and having a sofa on either side. It could also be where there is a center axis, essentially, and then duplicates on either side of that axis. The most common, as I said, is a fireplace and then having a chair on either side or a sofa, something like that. Another option could be having a wall that has a piece of art and then having a light fixture on either side. Another example is in a primary bedroom. You have your bed and you have your nightstands and you have your lamps. So those are all examples of symmetrical design that creates order and stability in your space. It is the most formal type of balance. It is very, very common, as is the next one, which is asymmetrical. So that would be the converse of you have a center axis, you have a sofa, and you have a couple of chairs. And so, looking at my notes here, it is essentially visual weight. So in the fireplace example, we have a sofa that's maybe 96 inches long, which is 8 feet. And then you probably have a couple of chairs because chairs are not as big, obviously. So those are going to be a couple of chairs then to visually give the same weight from the left to the right. That can also be the same in a primary bedroom, as we have your bed example and we have each nightstand. Now, one nightstand might be fairly chunky and fairly big, whereas the other one, maybe it's not as visually heavy, but maybe it's size-wise much larger, as would if you have a lamp on either nightstand. This has been pretty common of recent, having a style of lamp on one side and something that's complementary visually and stylistic on the other side. So again, having that balance of this visual weight, just balancing out. So that's asymmetrical. It is different on either side, but visually it feels the same from the left to the right. All right, so radial is the third one. And so radial is circular. The best example is in an entryway. This is going to be a light in the center, and then everything sort of builds around that. Now, a turret would be a prime example of a radial space where you have the center light, and then perhaps you have a bench going around, and then maybe you have some artwork on the other side and a couple of lights. Again, they can mix and match because that would be an asymmetrical radial balance. So if you want to get all fancy and tricky, having a couple of those pieces put together. So a radial that would be symmetrical would have the light in the center, and then you would have maybe chairs of the same on both sides, and then having an entryway walk through. So it doesn't necessarily mean that there's just one for each of these. Just like everything, they mix and match. So the fourth one that we're going to cover is texture and color. Now, we've already talked about texture and we've already talked about color being a principle and element of interior design, but this is also for balance. So having a very textured rug with a not so textured but a visual like basket weave fabric would be an example of balancing out the textures from one to another. Another example would be different hues and values of different colors. So having something that's really, really rich in depth, and then having something that's very light and airy, having those variety, the balance of those textures and those colors bring all of that full circle. So, again, when we're working with clients, we're not necessarily saying, oh, we definitely want an asymmetrical radial balance in this room. It's more of, how does this space need to function? How does this space need to work? And what's going to work best for this client? Because what works for one client doesn't necessarily work for another client. Everybody's different. Everybody's home functions differently, as it should, for their lifestyle and their wants and needs and personality. So tips for achieving balance, we have four things. You want to start with a focal point. I know we've touched on this many times, but having a focal point really starts everything for the design. Now, is that a piece of artwork? Is that a rug? Is it a pillow fabric? It doesn't matter. Just have something to start with. That's what we do for our clients. And then consider scale and proportion. We've talked about this as well. Having the correct scale and proportion for your room also creates that cohesive balance feel. Again, you feel when it's wrong and you feel when it's right. So we want to make sure that we're getting our spaces feeling just right. And then you also want to pay attention to visual weight. So again, the example of having a sofa and a couple of chairs. Here would be a bad example, a good example of a bad situation or application. So having a standard sofa that's maybe a little bit longer than a 2-seat sofa, or a love seat as it's called sometimes, and having a 3-seat sofa or a sofa. Having something that's a little more on the petite side, like an apartment sofa, and then having 2 gigantic oversized chairs. That visually, the weight of it doesn't jive, doesn't work. And so having the right scale and proportion and visual weight is really, I mean, they're all very important, but it's also a very important thing as having balance in your space. And then you want to create visual movement. I think last week we had talked about this, or a couple of weeks back. Having lines and patterns and furniture layout. So when you walk into a room, you really want to look around at everything that's in the room, from the top to the bottom, left and right, so that it's visually appealing and it's interesting to look at. So all of these pieces and the principles and elements of design really work together as a cohesive piece to really making every space the best that it absolutely can be. So what we do with our clients is we meet with them, we go through what their needs are, their wish list, and then we put together all of the best options for them. So we're going out to the showrooms, we're gathering all of the samples, we're saving them time so they don't have to go do those things. And so we're putting together all of these principles and elements of design so that their home is very cohesive and very customized and personal to their home and their lifestyle. And so we do this every day. We absolutely love it. It's our favorite thing. And so saving our clients time is really what we love to do. And then we just coordinate the full installation turnkey service for our clients. So going through all of these principles and elements of design, we go through all of these with our clients, making sure that the colors are right, the textures are right, the scale and proportion is right, the balance is right on. So we work with busy professionals because, again, we like to save time. And so if you are building or remodeling, let us know if we can be of service. We would love to put together all of these principles and elements for you, specific to your project and what your lifestyle is. So until next time, happy homes, and we'll see you then.